Guys, almost 50 years of excellence in legal profession. I have here Bob Stoker, also known as Robert Stoker II. He's the second. And he will join us once he... Bob, can you join us, my friend? Come, guys. We're moving now to the M&A panel, a mega panel. Bob, come join us. Let's start. Mr. David Altaner, take your seat here because I'll introduce you one by one, and okay, you can come. Come, all of you, and come. Ben is also here. Mr. Ben Givon, serial entrepreneur, also, guys. First time in a gaming event on stage. I'm really proud to have our client and our very nice guy, and also he's a lawyer, but he's not dealing as a lawyer now. Ben Givon, Bob was here, I believe, or you like to stand? Yeah, I remember. Sidney Bodashef, אני גם שאלת כאן ביי. So, רגע, איך עושים את זה? אוקיי. פה זה בסדר? כן. רוצים? מעולה. Bob in the middle. Perfect. So we have everybody here. Okay, we'll do first introductions. I want everybody here to know Frank Tolbaum, you'll be in the DFS. Don't go away. Okay, and Garrett Green as well. Okay, let's start. First of all, introductions, because I want everybody to know who is here. We have here, to the left of me, Mr. Robert Bob Stoker II. So can I call you Bob? It's too formal. Bob. Bob is from Michigan. He's from Dickinson Wright. Dickinson Wright is an amazing law firm. You know, personally, I like more boutique law firms, more smaller, more mid-sized. They're quite large in American numbers, but they have several offices all around the world, also in Canada. They do fantasy sports, they do online gaming, they do also lots of more boring, legal work. But in gaming, Bob is one of the leading experts. Bob was founding president of the IMGL, and I'm happy to have Bob as the moderator. So cheers for Bob. Again, first time in Tel Aviv. Yesterday we were driving in my car and he saw Jaffa, and I really enjoyed the time with you, Bob, yesterday. So first, this guy, first time again in a panel, and I'm really happy to have you here. Sidney Ifargan is from GK Option, which is the newest brand of binary options of GKFX. GKFX probably is the largest Turkish broker, very popular, highly regulated in all the leading jurisdictions. And Sidney Ifargan also is here, and I'm happy to have him here on stage. Also our client, and very successful in his venture where he is now already starting. We have here Ben Givon, as I said earlier, Ben Givon, serial entrepreneur. Ben, I believe, is one of the rarest person in this industry that didn't come from online gaming or Forex or binary. He came from marketing and classic entrepreneurship. He had a very interesting startup called My Room Services, which is it's not a startup anymore. It's like a big digital venture for catering for digital room services and concierge, already installed in many hotels in Germany, where our president in New York comes from. This is Ben Givon, and also Ben Givon, if any of you, and I already know many of you have been in the Berlin Affiliate Conference, the last one 1 month ago, they were the leading binary sponsor with their Porsche cars outside and Lamborghini. It was all courtesy of Ben's team at 10 Markets, which is a binary option provider. This is Ben Givon. My colleague, my esteemed colleague, Tal Chen, doesn't look like a CPA, but he's a CPA and a very successful one. He leads the TMT. TMT is technology, media, and telecommunication. And he's the leader of TMT at Deloitte. Deloitte, one of the 4 largest firms. Very successful. They're involved in many M&A transactions. I know him personally, and he's a good guy, and he gives very insightful advice, and is very different to the more conservative guys in this business. This is why we have him here on stage. Tal Chen. Thank you very much, Tal Chen. To the right of me, I have here the president of IMGL, Dr. Jorg Hoffman. Jorg is also a partner in Melchers, because, you know, IMGL is nice, but it's voluntarily, and in your free time you need also to work. So he's a partner in Melchers, which is a leading German law firm, has various offices all around Germany, and he's also considered as an expert in European law and in German law. To the right, it's a real name, Andrew Cotton. Andrew Cotton, that's the name. And you know, in the gaming business, many people are having made-up names, which is, you know, you take like a name of a film star. Andrew Cotton sounds like a name of a film star, but it's a real person. Didn't see his passport, but I know that's his name. So Andrew Cotton, guys, he was in Rank Casino Group. Rank is one of the largest entertainment groups in Great Britain. And he was part of Rank, and then I understood that the more and more people that I know was also in this leading group. He was also in JGR, Jeffrey Green Russell, which was a boutique law firm, lots of nice gaming technology deals that they dealt with. And actually, JGR was merged into Gordon Dad's in London, and making it one of, I believe, the largest licensing teams. And Andrew is heading the licensing team there, and also very experienced person. 34 years, I believe, you have in this industry. So I'm really happy to in licensing. So I'm happy to have here also for the first time in Israel. First time in Israel, also as well, Andrew. And last but not least, we have here our friend and fellow David Altaner, who I remember I was in Stockholm a year ago, and he called me, listen, I want to interview you for gambling compliance on binary options. I said, wow, that's interesting, and then we did the interview, and it's not something that is sold in newsstands or something like that. Gambling compliance is a very boutique-ish publication for intelligence, also for the payments and the gambling industry. So they have gambling compliance and payment compliance, and David is a news editor there, business news editor. Then we met again in Gibraltar, and I'm happy to see also David here in our panel. So wow, I make a panel, and now, with no further delay, Mr. Bob Stoker is already happy and delighted. Yeah.
Thank you, Tal. One of these days I'm going to ask you have to figure out how large a battery you have. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here in Israel. It's the first time I've been here. Everyone has been very welcoming and had a really great time the last couple of days. And it's a fabulous location. Let me explain a little bit about my background, and then I'm going to open this up. I'm going to start this out with a general question that's going to be focused on Tal Chen at Deloitte, and I'll talk about Deloitte just in a moment. But when people ask me what I do, I basically describe myself as a business lawyer, and I've been doing merger and acquisition work throughout my career, primarily in the regulated industries. And when I say the regulated industries, I'm talking about healthcare, gaming in particular, but a few other regulated industries too. And I've been doing the gaming in the gaming area since the 1980s, and I'm chair of the gaming practice group in the firm. As mentioned by Tal, we have a presence throughout North America, both in the US and Canada, including Nevada and Washington, D.C., two very important locations, but a whole bunch of other states also, as well as affiliation relationships in Malta, Macau, Eastern Europe, and South America. So my practice is really very much an international practice, and focused an awful lot on the internet because the internet has basically collapsed the country and state barriers. But I want to start out just in the big picture in terms of merger and acquisition. And Deloitte, as I think most of you realize, is one of the largest and one of the premier CPA firms in the world. And Deloitte does a significant amount of audit work in the gaming industry. And Tal is very much involved in that. And particularly, he has a lot of expertise in the technology, media, and the telecommunications industry, which of course includes gaming, and he's very active in the Fast 50 designations that Deloitte issues every year with the up and coming companies, etc. And they're really in the merger and acquisition area. There are really several different subtopics that I would like Tal to give a broad picture of and what he sees happening in these areas, and then I want to drill down with each of the panelists and get to some specific stuff, including a little later on, after I make a couple of introductory comments about fantasy sports. I want to tie in and focus on fantasy sports and the M&A activity and what may be coming down the pike thanks to what's going on in the U.S. right now. So, Tal, you know, we have technology centers which impact the gaming business. We have merger and acquisition and IP trends in gaming. We have the consolidation industry within the industry, both on the primarily with the manufacturers and software and the equipment manufacturers, but we're also seeing still seeing some consolidation in connection with the land-based operations, as well as seeing expansion of activity in Indian country in terms of going out and investment stuff. And we also see kind of winners and losers in all of this, both from a technology sector standpoint and also from a geography standpoint, plus the major trends by geographic area. Now that's a big group. I readily acknowledge that. But can you, give us a broad picture of what Deloitte and what you see occurring within the gaming industry, both from a technology sector and also from a geographic perspective?
All right, so no doubt that consolidation will continue. No doubt that consolidation will continue in the next few years. First, because the distribution is becoming more expensive. Second, because the client expectation is skyrocketing.
Sorry, maybe here. Okay.
We're working on
Try this.
here.
Sorry.
One. All right. So from the beginning, no doubt that the consolidation will continue in the next 2 to 3 years. Two reasons. One, distribution become much expensive. Second, expectation of the customers are skyrocketing, and therefore the cost to produce the gaming are going up. In addition, we can see that every time that we have a new wave of disruption in the gaming and in the technology that support the gaming industry, at the beginning we see a new wave of companies getting into the industry, and then once the technology is being getting into a mature stage in validation, we can see the start of an M&A. So when 2007, when Facebook pushed the social gaming, we saw many companies go into the industry from the social gaming, and then we started the waves of M&A with regard to social gaming. Then we have the mobile around 2010 and creates another wave of M&A. I would say in the last year and a half we see some kind of M&A related to virtual reality. And currently there is no new wave of technology that can push another wave of companies into the industry, and therefore we are seeing a huge M&A transaction. If we look on prediction, so we believe that by 2010 the industry will exceed about $120 billion in revenue. And interesting to know that about third, like $40 billion will come through mobile, and about 40%, which represent almost $50 billion, will come from Asia, which means we will see more and more M&A transaction in the mobile space and more acquisition of company who have a good presence in Asia. This is two main trends that we are seeing currently and we will continue to see in the next 2 years. I would say that mobile currently not only growing, but also create some cannibalization, eating the share of online, eating the share of console game, and eating the share of massive multiplayer online gaming. This is in a nutshell.
Okay, now I want to ask ask, and I want each one of you to address it from the perspective of your particular industries, and then I'm going to ask Dave a question that's going to focus in on Playtech and a couple of situations there. But from your perspective, when we have operators, we also have lawyers, we have lawyers that do a lot of M&A work, and lawyers that are working with the regulatory agencies. So my first question that I'd like each one of you to specifically address for a minute or two, because we are somewhat restricted in time, there are an awful lot of you guys here, is what impact do the regulators have on merger and merger combinations? What's the impact of the regulators as a practical matter? Let's start at this end and work our way down.
I'm his lawyer, so I will answer, you know. But I will make it more to the point, and then probably regarding your company, I would be happy to hear from Sydney. Sydney is working for a regulated company. GKFX is already regulated in several jurisdictions. GK Option, the subsidiary, is in the process of being regulated in Cyprus. And what I would like here to relate something which is more to your day-to-day work is the effect of this regulation on the choice of where to operate or where to open companies, etc. You can also speak about what we now open, GK Innovative Support.
I must be honest, GK Option don't have yet the regulation, so it's something I'm working for. But in other companies I used to work for, the SISEC was very important for the customers, I will say mostly. That it was a kind of proof that the broker was working by the law and was keeping the funds safe. I mean, the customers' funds safe. Look, I'm learning this because I was in the marketing previously. So from the marketing to CEO, it's quite different. So I guess in the next panel, I will be able to tell you exactly what it means. Obviously, now it's too early for me. Sorry.
Thank you, Sydney.
Hi. So our business at the moment is in the process of regulation by SISEC. So I can tell you that for us, we look at regulation from credibility and market. I'm looking at regulation from a credibility and a marketing point of view. The regulation, basically, in a marketing point of view, is a tool to promote the credibility of your brand, either if it's gambling or gaming or fantasy or forex or binary. But also from an operating point of view, it reduces our cost of processing payments and working with better banks. And basically, it surrounds the business. For us, as a medium-sized company at the moment, it's cost-effective to doing the regulation. I mean, the cost of the regulation creates it's very efficient for us. It creates more opportunities to us to enter a heavily regulated market like the UK market, the European market in general. I would like to say to Tals regarding the Asian markets, this is for us an interesting market from a regulation point of view. I mean, in Europe, it's very, very organized, and there is lots of we work with well-known lawyers and accounting firms as Deloitte and EY. But now we are trying to enter Asia and China in particular, and we find it very, very hard to understand the market and the regulation behind it.
Yeah, so just to add, I was referring to gaming. No doubt that with regard to gambling, Asia is a very complex situation. Some countries online gambling is forbidden by law, like Singapore. In other countries like China, there was actually few executives that was arrested because they were operating online gambling. And in gambling, online gambling, European market is the leading market. And I always believe that a market in which the European market is the leading one is not a healthy one. So no doubt that everybody is waiting to see if the Asian market will be open. and mainly to see if there will be more countries in the US that will regulate the market. Currently, I think there are 3 countries in the US that you can do online gambling. And according to the numbers that we get from New Jersey tax claims, it seems like other countries will also move, and therefore the US could be also a potential market from gambling.
Thank you. I will limit my comment to regulated markets, and I would say regulation, not just the regulator, but regulation is absolutely important because part of every merger or acquisition is a due diligence. So you have to find out the value of the company. And sometimes regulation causes considering to merge with another company just to save costs, because regulation causes a lot of costs in terms of taxes, in terms of fees. It might make sense to consider gaining a scale in these markets when it is too expensive to do your own business with a small company and another small company as competitors, if you could do it together. But basically, I would say regulation in terms of the due diligence is important in jurisdictions where the regulation or even legislation is not clear, is not certain, or is under scrutiny in certain development. And we're talking about Europe, of course. We're now looking at Sweden redrafting the gaming regulatory framework, which is a positive news. Can also come back to Germany. We're talking about bwin, for instance, talking about Tipico on sale. So what's the value of these companies when they're mainly targeting customers in Germany and the German regulation is not clear and not certified? This is the point where the gaming lawyers come into the scene and try to monitor and to value the perspective of these companies and the development of regulation. And this can go up and down, but it's key to come to a result.
Of course, in the UK, we're one of the most recent sets of regulation that's come into force, and it's almost exactly a year since the Act took effect. I think regulation, it has its advantages and its disadvantages. As Jorg has referred to, being regulated if there's certainty, there's also the consumer protection and the attraction of customers that they know they'll get their money back and they're protected. Obviously, the downsides with the number of jurisdictions you have to be licensed in, the costs of paying to the regulator. In the UK, for example, you have to employ a compliance function that can't hold any other post within the company, so there has to be an independent compliance employee. And, of course, the taxes. Obviously, the tax in the UK is currently subject to challenge and is going to be sent to the European Court. And that will actually have very wide implications because a lot of other member states will join in those proceedings. So there may be some certainty on the ability of individual states to charge tax. But the European Court has repeatedly said that regulation of gambling itself is justified and a member state can effectively introduce whatever regime it likes. So that's why we've got these very different approaches throughout Europe.
As Jörg and Andrew have said, regulation adds costs, and it makes things immensely more complicated for companies. So when a country regulates and licenses, you either have to comply or you have to leave and go somewhere else. And so it has spurred mergers and acquisitions in online gambling, and I'd be curious if the same thing is going to happen in financial trading, whether it's going to spur mergers and acquisitions as regulators get a better handle on the market. Maybe we could hear from some of the other people.
Well, Dave, a good example, you talked about the financial trading markets. Playtech just had 2 deals that it was planning on consummating in the financial markets that were delayed for apparently a variety of reasons, and as a result, because of the regulatory delays, etc., as a result, both those deals cratered. So do we have a situation where where the regulators can essentially either inadvertently or very subtly, without saying so, delay approvals to the point where the regulators either intentionally or unintentionally wind up crashing deals. Is this a potential or a real problem within the gaming industry, which generally is a very highly regulated industry? From your observations, what do you see?
Yes, less than 2 weeks ago, Playtech had 2 deals that ended, and we don't know exactly why. In the Irish situation, the Central Bank of Ireland said they were going to oppose the deal, and the bank didn't say why, and Playtech didn't say why. It just said we're going to fight the bank. And in the UK situation, the FCA, all we know is that it was going to take too long. It was going to pass the December 31st deadline. And so the question is, are regulators a barrier to mergers and acquisition in the financial trade industry, or is it just Irish and UK regulators, or is it an issue with financial trading companies in general? Maybe some of the panel members have opinions on that.
Anybody want to speak up on that? Express an opinion?
Well, all I know is that the FCA, because I do some FCA work as well, they take a minimum of 6 months to process an application. The Gambling Commission say that they'll process UK applications in 6 to 8 weeks. It was longer than that, obviously, when they had so many applications to deal with last year. But yes, it's not a rapid process. But the FCA can actually take a year to process applications for regulated activities.
Anyone else want to express an opinion on this?
Can move to the next question because we're already running late of time and our networking breaks will be shortened. So.
Okay, well, I'm going to go to something that's kind of an offshoot of this. I want to talk about fantasy sports for a second. It's been mentioned, as mentioned by Jorg, you mentioned it also, Tal. And since this is being driven by what's going on in the U.S., I'm going to give a quick 2-minute summary on this of distinguishing the BS from the reality. First of all, the UEGA, the Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act, did not legalize fantasy sports. What it did do is it said that if fantasy sports is legal under other federal law and under state law, then the money transfer companies, think banks, Western Union, credit card, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, all those, then those money transfer agencies could handle the funds relating to fantasy sports without violating federal law. That's what UEGA says. It doesn't say that fantasy sports is legal. In fact, it specifically says that none of the provisions in the Act modify other federal statutes or any state law. And in reality, in several states, fantasy sports is specifically made illegal, and there are a number of other jurisdictions where, by virtue of the general statutory language, it is also illegal. And what we have now is the focus is on daily fantasy sports, but for those of you that have seen the analysis that came out of Nevada or the analysis that has come out of the Attorney General's office in New York about why daily fantasy sports is not legal in their jurisdictions, and they're going to, in the case of Nevada, say, well, we'll allow it to happen if it's we'll allow fantasy sports to occur if it's regulated, but we don't want any daily fantasy sports, whereas New York has flat out said it's violation of New York law and also violates the Consumer Protection Act. So it really, at this point in time, becomes a state-by-state issue. There also, just for those of you who may not be aware of this, there is a grand jury that is impaneled in Florida that is looking at fantasy sports. And there's also rumors that, and I don't know if these are correct or not, that the Southern District of New York, which of course is the genesis for Black Friday for the poker business, also is taking a look at fantasy sports. So, as it stands right now, a preliminary injunction was sought by the New York Attorney General. A hearing was held this past Wednesday. On that preliminary injunction, the judge took the arguments by both FanDuel and DraftKings, as well as the Attorney General's office, under advisement, and indicated that he indicated the issue a decision on the preliminary injunction request to the Attorney General's office, the State Attorney General, by the way, within the next couple of weeks. So I think we'll see a decision within the next couple of weeks on a preliminary injunction. But the interesting thing about this is the following. There are a number of states, and I've heard this from regulators, that view that the daily fantasy sports are not legal under the laws of their jurisdiction, and the fact that FanDuel and DraftKings were taking bets in their states, that would have an impact on any regulatory environment that is established here. I think that at the end of the day, if I'm predicting things, fantasy sports will ultimately, it'll be a state-by-state issue, but it will be in a number of states be allowed, but it will be regulated. Right now it is totally unregulated. It will be regulated, there will be some kind of licensing. In a number of those jurisdictions, I think very possibly will do the same thing that occurred with poker, with the 3 big poker sites that were shut down on Black Friday, and basically say the guys behind those 3 poker sites aren't going to be able to get licensed in our state. And I've already heard that from some regulators who are saying that, yeah, we want to regulate it, we want to tax it, but the folks that are doing it illegally, we're not going to ever approve them in the state. So that raises another question in terms of M&A. I think, you know, it may be that maybe these 2 organizations will wind up selling their data bank to, just like what happened in the poker Black Friday,
and Poker Stars,
other people, and then they wind up being the regulated entities. Now, do you think that's what's going to come down the pike? And I know that Andrew has seen some stuff in the UK indicating what they may be doing, and I'd like to get, because this relates to M&A, I'd like to get, you know, the thinking of folks here in the panel.
Well, that is some of the more controversial issues, I believe, in the gaming business, is the idea, we didn't say it by name, but the idea of a bad actor. What is a bad actor? And if the personality of the owner is actually having any influence on the decisions. So I believe the most famous example is exactly what Bob mentioned, is the Poker Stars. Because Poker Stars, that was owned by the Scheinbaum family from Isle of Man, originally from United States, from Canada. So these guys were forced, let's say, pushed politely to sell their assets. And once they sold the assets, and once their hands were shaken, presto, all the problems, not all of them, but most of them were solved. Now, the question, and the big question, and there is still no answer, but I believe that in a few months we'll see it. First of all, what will be the status of the regulation of daily fantasy sports and fantasy sports in the United States? I just want to remind everybody that we still have a panel on this specific topic afternoon, so we won't deal with it too much now. But regarding M&A, it's very important. I believe, yes, that at the end of the day, I'm not sure it's a good thing or a bad thing, but these guys are operating now FanDuel and DraftKings and raise like $80 or $100 million. I'm not saying they're doing anything illegal, because they're not doing anything illegal, and even in New York, it's not a final. But at the end of the day, I believe that they will be forced to sell and dispose these assets, not to one of each other, but probably to another conglomerate of gaming, because of this bad actor scheme. And then probably in a few months or a few years, we'll see another mega deal in this event, only because of this, that here a really big gray area. That's, of course, my point of view. We'll see what's happening next.
Andrew?
Does this one work? Yeah. Yes, it is. Well, of course, it's particularly interesting in the UK because DraftKings in July obtained their pool betting license to launch in the UK. I believe they still haven't launched. And of course, what they will have had to have done since obtaining the license is now disclosed to the Gambling Commission, although of course the Gambling Commission will be fully aware of it, that there are these investigations in the United States. And the process in the United Kingdom involved using the multi-jurisdictional business form. And of course, when it comes to then applying for an authorization elsewhere, those people are going to have to disclose that there were investigations. And so where's it going to end? And as you say, it may be that the personnel are going to have to not take part in the operation any longer, because otherwise it'll prevent them from being licensed in other jurisdictions. But there's been also in the UK development, excuse those colleagues from Malta, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, I think it's Ulala, have also just obtained a UK license, and they have actually launched Daily Fantasy with the UK Premier League, and they've just done a deal with a particular football company, football team, Leicester City, who I just checked this morning, second in the league apparently, so it doesn't seem to have done them any harm. So it's now going down to sort of individual team relationships as well.
Any other comments?
Yes, usually mergers, acquisitions, it's a matter of competition, saving costs, and market strength and power. In the gaming industry, due to regulation and due to the regulatory requirements, the scope of reasons for mergers has been extended. As you said, I think the best example is really Amaya, Full Tilt, PokerStars, wonderful brands, very well recognized and established, good software, good concept, but unable to get a license. The merger is something setting free, but it's not the end. The merger itself was not the basis to get a license and be tolerated. It also affected the management people. I think there's a list of 10 people or so who had to leave the business, even software developers, to satisfy the regulator. And I think we see these more and more happening. This is, on the other hand, an opportunity for investors and proper companies to get a fantastic product, not too far from now, maybe here and there on daily fantasy sports, will offer this opportunity if there's no other way to comply. But of course, you need to be safe that there will be regulation available.
I think, you know, there's a lesson here, because what the internet has done, I gave a commencement speech a couple of years ago, and I said that the internet, development of the internet, is the most significant event that has occurred since the invention of the printing press. And I really believe that is the case, because what it has done is it has broken down barriers, country barriers, state barriers, etc. And it also has created a tremendous amount of creativity by some really bright people, including in the gaming industry. And you look at social gaming. Is social gaming regulated gaming? Is it, you know, is it legal? Is it illegal? It still varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, country to country, state to state. And with all these new developments, binary options just a few years ago were developed, tremendously successful, and in a lot of jurisdictions, unregulated. Other jurisdictions, US is regulated. And I think one of the messages here, in terms of the impact of regulators in merger and acquisition activity, is that in the gaming area, you always have to, you know, be very, very careful about whether or not you are treading from the unregulated area and falling into, the way you run your business, a regulated area that if you don't get licensed, then it's viewed as illegal in some jurisdictions. And then, even though you built up this great business, you're subject to bad boy provisions. And I think that sometimes folks don't think through that very carefully as they're putting their business together. Rather, the enthusiasm and their belief about, gee, I don't have to be regulated, you know, gets them so excited about a really great product that they start cutting corners. And then that ultimately can come back and bite them when they build up something really significant, but then someone comes along, as is casing with what's happening in fantasy sports, and saying, we're going to start regulating this. and because we just want to regulate it, plus in some cases because they want to tax it. And then you get into an area about, gee, are we the ones that can be licensed on this? So I think it's something, it's a moral of the story here is you really have to be very careful in this industry because it is viewed in many areas of the world as sort of sinful, and therefore it has to be regulated, the concern about bad guys and the criminals and everything else in the industry because it's a money industry. So you have to be very careful and thoughtful about how you approach your business plan, your business development plan. Any final comments from anybody? We're running out of time.
Yeah. So I have one bomb to throw into the air. So if I'm looking in the sport industry, so from one side of the road, I can see the professional teams. We are working with them, most of them losing money, but they are the ones that creating the content, paying the salaries for the players, and owning the fan, which is a captive audience. Sometimes it's tens of millions of fans, and they are losing money. And on the other side of the street, we have the fantasy game, the online sport betting, creating a lot of money, very profitable companies. And I think if we look into the long term, these two realities cannot live together. Sometimes there will be some kind of revolution. We will see a new collaboration. We will see a new business combination. Because I don't think that the sport teams could be in a position that they are continuing to provide the content and losing money at the same time.
I think you're absolutely right. That's what's going to happen down the line. It's very interesting, and actually there's quite a bit of hypocrisy amongst for example, the NFL that says they're opposed to gambling, but then they have both feet, in the fantasy sports. Excuse me, it is gambling, and the only question is it skill-based, but you're still betting money on a belief that you're going to win money. And the last time I looked, that's betting. And there's a hypocrisy there in some areas, but I think that ultimately what we'll see is, because it is wildly popular, it's going to wind up being legalized initially on a state-by-state basis, but very heavily regulated. And that's the trend I think we'll see. But we'll get into new areas, new creative areas where in the social gaming, because we're seeing them merge together, the social gaming, you'd mentioned that earlier, the social gaming and then the fantasy sports and the regular, what we always thought was gambling, they're merging together, and a lot of creative ideas are there. And I think the warning sign here is that recognize that regulators, when they think things are getting out of control, the political class and the regulators are going to try to get control of it and regulate it, and maybe ultimately tax it. Usually, they like revenue, and so you have to kind of anticipate that and plan your business plan accordingly. So at the end of the day, you're not going to be cut out of the prize. Thank you very much. We ran out of time.
Thank you very much, guys.